You know, the human soul was not designed to wake up defeated. But somewhere between our dreams and our daily distractions, we trade purpose for comfort and call it quitting. Let me tell you something. You didn't just quit. No, it's deeper than that. Motivation doesn't vanish, it withers in silence, under the weight of unmet potential. And if we don't trace back the steps, we'll spend a lifetime blaming our future on a moment we never understood. Today, we go beyond the surface. We look into the real reasons, the subtle thieves of drive, the quiet killers of ambition. Because once you understand what really killed your motivation, you can resurrect it with wisdom, not willpower. You know, people don't just wake up one morning and decide to quit on their dreams. That's not how it works. What really happens is more subtle and far more dangerous. What really happens is that somewhere along the journey, they lose their why. The fire that once kept them up at night, that used to pull them out of bed with energy and conviction, slowly fades. Not all at once, but like a candle in the windsoft, quiet and unnoticed until one day it's out. And they confuse that with failure. But it's not failure, it's forgetfulness. It's detachment from purpose. You see, a person can endure almost any how if the why is strong enough. I've seen this in business, in relationships, in health. I remember when I first started building my own enterprise. The days were long, the nights uncertain. There were setbacks, disappointments, and more rejections than I care to count. But my why, my reason, was so vivid in my mind. I could see it even when everything around me looked dim. I wanted to create a life of value, not just for me, but for those around me. I wanted freedom not just of time or money, but of spirit. That kept me going. But the moment your why becomes vague, life becomes heavy. Tasks become chores. Discipline starts to feel like punishment. That's when you start saying things like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, or maybe it's just not the right time. No, you didn't quit because it was hard. You quit because you forgot why it was worth it. The key is to return to the vision. Paint it again in your mind. Make it vivid, make it loud, make it a reason so compelling that no obstacle dares to stand in your way. I once said, a purpose worth pursuing is one that wakes you up before the alarm clock does. And if it no longer does that, it's not time to quit, it's time to remember. Most people don't quit with a dramatic declaration or a grand finale. They just stop showing up the way they used to. Not because they wanted to give up, but because the habits that once supported their growth quietly disappeared. You didn't quit, your habits did. And when your habits walked out the door, your motivation followed closely behind. Every achievement, every goal, every dream, it doesn't begin with a miracle. It begins with a decision repeated daily. Success is not something you chase. It's something you attract by the person you become. And who you become is shaped by what you consistently do. I've always believed you can't hire someone else to do your push-ups for you. That's not just about fitness, it's about ownership. You have to own your daily disciplines, the small ones, the boring ones, the ones that don't seem to matter today but will make all the difference in 6 months. Let me give you an example. I used to mentor a young man who had big dreams, wanted to be financially independent, own his own business, travel the world. He had the vision. He had the excitement. But slowly I noticed he stopped showing up to the early meetings. He stopped reading. He stopped tracking his progress. And sure enough, his enthusiasm vanished. Not because he wasn't capable, but because the scaffolding, the habits collapsed. He didn't quit. His consistency did. You have to treat your habits like the bricks in a foundation. Miss one brick and it's fine. Miss 10 in a row and the whole structure starts to wobble. Discipline is what builds the invisible bridge between where you are and where you want to be. But if you abandon the structure, don't be surprised when your motivation falls through the cracks. So if you feel like your energy's gone, your drive is lost, your spirit is drained dead, and ask what went wrong. Ask what stopped happening. What routines did you abandon? What rituals did you neglect? Because you didn't quit, your habits did. And it's time to bring them back to life. You know, it's easy to look back and say, I guess I just didn't have it in me. But I want you to consider something deeper. You didn't quit because you lacked ability or desire. You quit because you waited too long to begin. Procrastination is not a delay tactic. It's a silent killer of motivation. The longer you wait to act, the harder it becomes to start, and eventually your belief that you ever could begin starts to fade away. The mind loves momentum. And when you delay action, you don't just lose time, you lose confidence. You begin to doubt yourself, question the dream, and settle for comfort. I always say, don't let the start stop you. And yet so many do. They wait for a perfect day, a perfect plan, or a perfect feeling. But let me tell you something, perfection is just procrastination in a suit and tie. I remember a time early in my career when I had the chance to launch a small business idea. I had all the pieces, ready contacts, tools, capital, but I kept thinking, let me get just a little more information. Let me prepare a little more. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And before I knew it, someone else launched the exact same idea and took it to market. It wasn't that I lacked the drive, it's that I waited too long. The window opened, and while I was still thinking, it closed. You see, when you wait, you give fear time to rehearse. You give doubt a place to grow. The longer you sit in hesitation, the louder the voice becomes that says, maybe you're not ready. And eventually, that voice convinces you that quitting is just wisdom in disguise. But it's not. It's delay dressed up as logic. So the next time you feel unmotivated, don't just look at what's missing. Look at what was postponed. Look at the opportunities you told yourself you'd start tomorrow. Because you didn't quit. You simply waited too long to start. And that delay drained your drive. Motivation often gets mistaken for a feeling, something that should ignite like a firecracker bright, explosive and fleeting. But the truth is, relying on emotion alone to carry you forward is like building a house on sand. It might stand for a while, but the moment the tide comes in, it all crumbles. You didn't quit because you lacked passion. You quit because passion alone can't sustain you. What carries you through the storms is discipline, the quiet, steady force that shows up even when the mood isn't right. I've seen many people chase dreams fueled by bursts of enthusiasm. They dive in head first on days they feel inspired and retreat when the clouds roll in. It's a cycle that leads to exhaustion and eventual surrender. Let me share something I learned early on. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. I say that because discipline is what you choose when emotions falter. It's the commitment to keep moving, even when your heart feels heavy and your mind wants to quit. Think about an athlete training for a marathon. On good days, their excitement fuels the run. But on the cold mornings when their body aches, or when they'd rather stay in bed, it's discipline that drags them onto the road. That same principle applies to every goal worth chasing. The people who win are not those who wait for motivation. They create it through discipline. In my own life, there were times I didn't feel like waking up early to study or working late to build my business. But I made a promise to myself, and discipline kept that promise alive. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect feeling. It was about showing up again and again. You didn't quit because you lacked emotion. You quit because you didn't build the discipline to carry you through when emotions ran dry. And that discipline is what separates the dreamers from the doers. It's easy to think that success is all about hitting big milestones, the promotions, the sales, the applause. But here's the catch. When you get addicted to results instead of progress, you set yourself up for a kind of heartbreak that can kill motivation faster than anything else. You didn't quit because you're weak. You quit because you measured your worth by outcomes that are often out of your control. I've known people who worked hard, day in and day out, but when the instant success they craved didn't appear, they gave up. They forgot that progress is the quiet, steady current beneath the roaring waves of achievement. The truth is, growth happens in small, sometimes invisible steps. If you fixate only on the scoreboard, you'll miss the game entirely. There's a saying I hold close. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant. I learned that early in my career, working on small projects that didn't produce overnight riches. I could have thrown in the towel, but instead, I chose to focus on getting better each day, refining skills, learning lessons, and building habits. That consistent effort was the real currency of my progress. Think about learning a new language or mastering a musical instrument. If you only pay attention to how fluent you are or how perfect your performance is, discouragement will set in. But if you celebrate the small wins, learning a new phrase, hitting a clean note, you build momentum. That momentum becomes the fuel that keeps you going even when the big results seem distant. You didn't quit because success is impossible. You quit because you forgot that success is a process, not just an event. When you focus on progress, not just the prize, motivation becomes a steady flame, not a flicker waiting for the next big hit. You didn't quit because you lacked potential. You quit because the people around you drained your fire. When you surround yourself with cold, indifferent, or negative influences, motivation withers like a plant starved of sunlight. We are social creatures wired to absorb the energy of those closest to us, and if that energy is chilly or dismissive, it can freeze your drive faster than any internal struggle. I remember early in my journey, there were moments when my ideas were met with skepticism or outright dismissal. Those who should have been my supporters instead became obstacles, their doubt echoing louder than my own hope. It was like trying to build a fire with wet wood. No matter how much you blew on the embers, they just wouldn't catch flame. But then I realized something important. The warmth you need to keep your motivation alive must come from your environment as much as from within. Seek out those who inspire you, who believe in your potential even when you falter, and who challenge you to grow rather than tear you down. It's not about blind cheerleading. It's about surrounding yourself with people whose energy fuels your progress rather than saps it. I've seen this in practice. When I started connecting with mentors and peers who shared my values and vision, my motivation skyrocketed. Their encouragement wasn't just about feeling good, it was about creating a climate where effort and growth were celebrated, where setbacks were stepping stones, not dead ends. You didn't quit because you're not strong enough. You quit because you tried to shine under a cloudy sky, and until you find the right company to walk with, that sky won't clear. The lesson is simple. The company you keep shapes the journey you take. Choose wisely. You didn't quit all at once. You let the small things slide until they piled up and crushed your motivation. It's rarely a single monumental failure that breaks a person's spirit, but the tiny choices made every day that, over time, erode your momentum like a dripping faucet slowly wearing away stone. Those small compromises, skipping a workout, procrastinating on a task, ignoring a good habit seem insignificant in isolation, but they add up in ways that quietly sabotage your progress. I've learned this firsthand. Early in my career, I used to underestimate the power of the little things. I thought big success came from grand gestures and major breakthroughs. But the truth was, my downfall began when I stopped tending to the basics: consistency in effort, integrity in small promises, and discipline in everyday routines. One day, I'd miss my morning reading. The next, I'd neglect a phone call or delay planning. Each small lapse didn't feel like much, but they accumulated, and soon my motivation was nowhere to be found. There's a saying I hold close. Success is neither magical nor mysterious. Success is the natural consequence of consistently applying the basic fundamentals. This wisdom reminds me that neglecting the fundamentals, no matter how small, destroys the foundation beneath your dreams. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. Without attention to detail, the entire structure becomes unstable. So the real enemy of motivation isn't failure, it's the habit of letting small things slide. Every time you ignore the little disciplines, you chip away at your own confidence and momentum. But the good news? You can reverse this. Start today by recommitting to the small wins, the habits and choices that seem minor, but hold the power to rebuild your drive. Your motivation doesn't disappear overnight. It fades in the shadows of neglected small things. Guard those moments fiercely. You didn't quit because you lost the fight. You quit because you stopped checking the scoreboard. Reflection is the quiet, often overlooked force that keeps motivation alive. When you forget to pause and look back, you lose sight of how far you've come. And without that perspective, the journey feels endless and exhausting. I remember a time when I was pushing hard toward a goal. I was so focused on what was next that I never took a moment to appreciate the progress I'd already made. I felt drained, frustrated, ready to throw in the towel. But when I finally sat down to reflect, I realized I'd moved further than I gave myself credit for. That moment of clarity rekindled my motivation and gave me fresh energy to keep going. Reflection is like checking your compass during a long hike. If you never look at the direction, you risk wandering off the path or feeling lost. It's not enough to work hard, you have to work smart by taking stock regularly. Philosophers and thinkers have long emphasized the importance of self-awareness. In practice, reflection doesn't have to be complicated. It can be a few minutes each day to review what worked, what didn't, and why. Journaling your wins and lessons learned can help build momentum. Celebrating small victories reminds your brain that progress is happening even when results seem slow. This mental pause not only sharpens your focus but rebuilds your confidence, making the mountain ahead seem climbable again. So if you're feeling the weight of quitting creeping in, ask yourself, when was the last time you reflected on your journey? Because motivation doesn't just survive on action, it thrives on awareness. Don't forget to look back. It might be exactly what pushes you forward. You didn't quit because you weren't good enough. You quit because you let comparison steal your confidence. In the theater of our minds, comparison plays the villain, casting shadows over our own accomplishments and blinding us to the unique path we're meant to walk. When we fixate on others' successes, we forget that each journey is different and the only real competition is with ourselves. I've seen this firsthand, standing among people who seemed to have it all figured out while I was still struggling to find my footing. It's easy to get caught up in measuring your progress against someone else's highlight reel and feel like you're coming up short. But what they don't show you is the late nights, the failures, the doubts that no one talks about. You can't build your motivation on a foundation of envy or self-doubt because it's like trying to build a house on sand it won't stand. One wise saying I carry with me is, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. This reminds us that success is a marathon, not a sprint, and everyone's timeline is different. What matters is whether you're growing, learning, and moving forward in your own story. Instead of comparing, focus on cultivating gratitude for what you've accomplished and the strengths you possess. Replace the toxic narrative of, I'm not enough, with, I'm becoming enough every day. When you stop looking sideways and start looking inward, your motivation begins to grow stronger and more sustainable. Remember, confidence isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than who you were yesterday. Let go of comparison and you reclaim the power to keep moving forward with your own authentic momentum. As we come to the close of this conversation, remember this. Quitting is never a sudden event. It is the slow unraveling of what once fueled your fire. You didn't just quit because you lacked strength or willpower. You lost sight of your purpose, let habits slip, waited too long to start, leaned on fleeting emotions, chased results over progress, surrounded yourself with the wrong influences, ignored the small details, forgot to reflect, and let comparison erode your confidence. These are the true culprits that quietly drain your motivation. But here's the good news. Motivation can be rebuilt. It starts with reclaiming your why, committing to consistent habits, embracing discipline over emotion, valuing progress over immediate results, seeking uplifting company, mastering the small things, reflecting regularly, and silencing the poison of comparison. The power to rise again lies within you in the choices you make every day. So, today, I challenge you to take one small step toward reclaiming your motivation. Write down your why. Identify one habit to strengthen. Reflect honestly on your progress without judgment. And surround yourself with those who lift you higher. Your journey isn't over, it's just beginning. Don't quit on yourself. Keep moving forward because your future depends on it.